While the headlines say Bayou real estate prices are sliding, the real story is a massive 43% surge in buyers hitting the streets in January. Is this a market crash or the best window for affordability we've seen in years? We're diving into the Homa and Thibodaux numbers next.
Welcome to the RE Real Estate Podcast, where we discuss buying and selling real estate in black and white. Here are your hosts, Ben Harang and Clint Galliano.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the RE Real Estate Podcast. My name is Ben Harang. I'm here with my co-host, Clint Galliano. How you doing today, Clint?
I'm doing wonderful, Ben. How you doing?
Clint, I'm doing terrific. We're on a Thursday afternoon doing our 71st episode. It seems like we started yesterday, we started a year and a half ago, it feels like. We started a year
Just
and a half
about,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah. When the idea germinated. Here we go. We keep coming back for more, I guess. What are we talking about today, Clint?
All right. We are talking about our market update for January data, and we're going to be covering numbers for the whole Bayou Board of Realtors and Homa and Thibodaux individually. We're going to try and take this into do it a little bit differently than we've done in the past. In the past, we've just kind of recited the numbers and provided a little commentary. And so we're going to take this and maybe a little bit deeper discussion and pull some insights that aren't necessarily displayed where they jump out at you. All right. So the first thing we're going to cover is the price drop or an opportunity. So some key data points: that regional median sales price is a little bit over $206,000. That's down 10.3% from January of last year. Now, our pending sales are up 132. So that's 43.5% increase over last year. And the housing affordability index is up to 141. That's an almost 20% increase. So that seems like a nebulous number, but the basics is if the housing affordability index was 100, that means that on average, the income that the average person brings in is enough for them to live on and cover their expenses. As it gets above 100, then that shows that the housing is cheaper than the maximum you can afford. So with it being at 141, that's almost 50% higher than break even. So that's pretty neat.
It is.
While we may have some wage increase, ultimately it's the lower prices that are driving that housing affordability increase.
We're not seeing a market crash, which said, some people sitting on the sideline saying, I'm going to wait till the market crashes, then I'm going to go buy everything up. Well, the market is not crashing. The market is correcting. And the correction is the median price is down 10%. But with that kind of demand, the prices are not going to stay down, because real estate is a function of supply and demand. So if you think you're wanting to buy a house in 2026, now is probably the best time of the year to get in on it before the spring kicks in and more buyers even come into the market. So you have a window right now, I think, that is unique.
I agree. And there's right now is also, with the increase in affordability, it's kind of a green light for buyers who were priced out in 24 and 25 that were just priced out of the market. Some of that is also due to interest rates coming down a little. They're back to more of a normal level than what we saw in 23 and 24. I think that's an opportunity. It'll kind of, I guess, thaw out people that were frozen with the 3% mortgages, and if they needed to sell and buy a new home, they were looking at a 7% mortgage or higher. And without or with lower rates. And that's another reason why people may be moving. Let's talk about the Tale of Two Cities. It's our favorite topic when we're doing market updates.
It is, and we've said before, I'm sitting in my office in Thibodaux, Clint sitting in his office in Homa. We are probably less than 12 miles away, and sometimes it feels like we're in at least different time zones. Because of the differences, but I think there's reasons why it happens, and there's good aspects of both markets. The price of the median house in Homa is $179,500 with a 6.88 month of supply of houses to sell. Generally considered 6 months plus or minus of inventory is a balanced market, so Homa's trending towards a buyer's market, but they're still pretty balanced. Thibodaux, in the meantime, the median price is $252,000 with a 4.12 month supply of inventory. So we're well into a seller's market in Thibodaux. And on the surface, it's like, whoa, there's a $70,000 difference between the median price of homes in Homa and Thibodaux. And I think that has to do with all of the new construction that goes on in North Lafourche. When we say Thibodaux, we're using the 70301 zip code, which is North Lafourche. And DSLD, for their marketing strategy, has decided to build their houses in Lafourche Parish, in North Lafourche, rather than Terrebonne.
They do have two neighborhoods in Terrebonne Parish. They're like 9 or 20, or not 20, but 9 or 13 DSLD neighborhoods in the Thibodaux area.
Right. They have some in Terrebonne, but the bulk of them in Thibodaux. And Clint and I were talking, preparing for this, about going through some data, and something I saw was, if you have the opportunity to buy the new house with the warranty versus a resale house for the same price, it's a no-brainer. We have that conversation all the time. Buy a DSLD house 3 years ago, and they're still building that house in the same neighborhood that you bought in 3 years ago. You're not going to get any appreciation until DSLD finishes building in that subdivision and they move on. So there's dynamics that are good for both places. You don't have the selection of new homes in Homa that you have in Thibodaux, but the resale, you might get a better deal in Homa, depending on where you live. So don't let the prices or the market drive where you're going to live. You want to live where you want to live for a reason. Once you decide that, go find the best deal you can, whether it's a new construction or a resale, to fit your needs, and make that house your home for 3 to 5 years while the market does what the market does. And you're going to wake up one day and decide you might need a little bigger house. You might have more people living in your house with you. Some children might have come along. And then go buy your next house. Buy your first house first, and live in today's market and make a house work for you.
Yeah, definitely. That's some solid advice. So some other things that I think are contributing to the difference in price point with Thibodaux is insurance. Insurance is kind of a hidden factor in home value. Typically, and especially because of the new construction homes, you're going to wind up paying less insurance in Thibodaux in general because it's further inland from the coast. So that applies. So you may be paying a higher price overall for a house, but your insurance costs have a really good chance of being lower. And so that equals or equates to a lower monthly note. It might be more expensive, but it might be cheaper because you have a lower escrow. And the other thing is just overall is generally a much lower supply, so there's less choice. So sellers can be picky about what they'll accept to sell a house.
The reality is, we had Hurricane Ida in August of 2021. Insurance went through the roof. Availability and affordability were big problems. We're in February of 2026. We are starting to see the insurance prices moderate. Not the flood insurance, but the homeowners insurance has more competition. We might not see a lot of it this year, but it's certainly trending for more companies to be writing homeowners insurance in Louisiana, and the more companies that are writing it, the more competitive the premium it will be. So I think there's reason for some optimism on that front. I'm thinking you might see it more in 27 on a renewal than you will in 2026, but it's certainly headed that way. So even if the premium's a little high the first year, you can look forward to hopefully some premium decreases in the next year or so.
Yep, indeed. So thinking about the future a little bit, we could potentially be experiencing a pending explosion. Some key data points. There's a 43.5% increase in pending sales regionally. New listings are up 9.5%. 185 new homes were listed, and that's for the month of January. So that 43% jump is a leading indicator. That means houses are being moved now, will be in the closed sales headline for March and April. And with the inventory check, we've got 887 homes for sale in the Bayou region. So that's up 4.6%. It looks like the lock-in effect is starting to fall apart, really. People are finally willing to list their homes again. So for the first time in years, we kind of have a healthy amount of choice after years of almost no inventory available and crazy prices and things like that. You're not forced into the only house on the block. You know, there's a lot of choice available, no matter where you're looking at.
I had a conversation with somebody last night. A friend of mine has a house listed with another agent, and they were bemoaning the lack of activity and the pricing and whether they were going to sell it or rent it. And I was dancing gingerly, and he was pressing and about what I thought. And I said, you know, and you and I have talked about this, Clint. Don't just keep driving the price. Pay the closing costs. Make it attractive for the buyer to pick your house, because they do have more options now. So the buyers can be pickier now. It was the sellers were picky. Well, now the buyers can be picky on the houses. So when you have somebody in there, you can position your house to be the next one to sell by offering the closing costs. And he said they had a showing this weekend, and he was going to wait until after that showing to see what happened to offer the closing costs. I said, no, offer the closing costs to the people that are interested in your house, because if you do it after, you might catch them after they found another house that was paying for the closing cost. So I know they're thinking, you know, I'm gonna wait and see, and hopefully this one won't need the closing costs. Offer to pay the closing costs and get the house sold. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox. You can position your house to make it sell without giving it away. And that went off on a tangent. I'm sorry, Clint. We broke out.
That's all right. That's some solid advice. The majority of what we've been talking about is for buyers, but that's some valid advice for sellers. Some of the things to, I guess you could say, the homework. We haven't handed out homework in a while. If you're a buyer, stop waiting for the crash. Ben said it earlier. Crash isn't coming. This is a correction. People say, oh, well, this happened back when, and that happened back when, and this is happening now, and that might happen now. And this is not 2006 to 2008. This is not the late 70s, early 80s. This is today. Okay, so there's not a crash coming. There's affordability now. You know, you've got options. Prices have come down a little bit to where they were over the last 4 years. So there's real opportunity to get a deal on a house. And then sellers, on your side, on average, you're getting 97.4% of the asking price. In other words, what homes are being listed at, on average, people are paying 97.4% of that. Buyers are back, but they're savvy. They're paying attention, and they're not necessarily going with whatever the list price is. To reiterate what Ben said, price it right, and it'll move. It may take median 114 days to get it sold, but if it's priced right, it'll be way less than that.
One thing we haven't really talked about you mentioned earlier about the people with the 3% mortgages. They're starting to list their houses, and they are, because life goes on. People said they were bragging they had 2.75% rate, and I said, I hope you like your life and your family, because you're not going to be able to move. Well, life goes on and things happen, and so obviously some of those people are now in a position where they want to sell their house. But what some of those loans, not all of them, but some of them have, is an assumable mortgage. So if you have a 2.75% 3% loan and the loan is assumable, it's a pain in the neck to do, but you can hang the assumption of your current mortgage to the buyer, and your house will absolutely go straight to the top of the list if the mortgage is in fact assumable. Buyers, you can ask if mortgages are assumable. A lot of people don't know whether or not they're assumable. Some of those 2.75% 3% mortgages are assumable. So that's just something to drill down into to determine whether or not it's assumable.
Touching on that also is, I know I had this attitude of, it's an assumable loan. The buyer can buy it at whatever the loan balance is. That's not the case. There will be, or I'd say probably 95% of the time, there's equity involved. And so the sellers are looking to cash out some of that equity with the sale. So the buyer will have to get those funds to make up that gap between the loan balance and the market value for the home. But ultimately, it's still a better deal for the buyer if they can pull that off, because their note's going to be way cheaper than if they went out and got a loan at the current rate.
Right. If the loan is $200,000 and the price of the house is $300,000, if you go get a mortgage today, you're still paying $300,000. But if you can assume a $200,000 mortgage and pay the $100,000 with a HELOC or some other kind of loan, it still costs the $300,000, but you got a $200,000 balance at a 3% rate. So it's worth drilling down to see if it's even possible.
Yes, indeed. All right. So let us know if you like this market update, if you like us covering it in this style, or y'all want us to go back to just reading the numbers off the report and talking about what we see. Seriously, let us know. Let us know what you think. We're going to do this again in March, somewhere around between the first and second week of March. We have to wait for the numbers to come out, but once we've got them, we can do another update. This is also an off-cycle episode, but we may release it in cycle. Possibly so. We'll see how that goes. But if you like what we're doing, go to realestatepodcast.com, like, share, comment, and subscribe. You can access our YouTube channel from there. You can listen to individual episodes, or you can subscribe from your favorite podcast app. And whether it's the Apple Podcast app or a Podcast 2.0 compliant podcast app, or if you like our iHeartRadio or Spotify, or we're on all the channels, so you can find us anywhere you look for us.
Did you say they can find us on realestatepodcast.com?
That's right, realestatepodcast.com.
That's what I thought you said.
That's what I said.
All right. All right, Clint.
So go check it out. See what you think. Give us some feedback. And you know what? We hadn't said this in a while, but if you got questions, you can go to realestatepodcast.com and click on Ask a Question and ask us a question, and we'll answer it on another episode.
All right, Clint. Another one in the can. Have a good one.
All right, you too, Ben. Bye-bye.
While we may discuss topics such as lending, interest rates, title law, real estate law, and appraisals in addition to real estate sales and transactions, please remember that we are only trained and licensed as real estate salespeople in Louisiana. The information shared on this podcast is for general purposes only and should not be taken as legal or financial advice. We may be agents, but unless we have signed paperwork stating otherwise, we are not your agents.